Dani Dayan, thank you for joining me on UpFront. Many Israelis on your side of the political spectrum, the right of the spectrum, celebrated Donald Trump's victory in the US election after years of tension between your government and the Obama administration. Yet even President Trump has asked your Prime Minister, and I quote, "As far as settlements, I'd like to see you hold back on settlements for a little bit." Will you listen to him? Will Prime Minister Netanyahu listen?
Well, actually, our cabinet already made a decision to listen to the president and to formulate a new policy of some kind. People refer to it as restraint. I don't know if that's the proper word, but yes, actually, factually, we did.
So your government agrees that there is a problem with settlements, that it's counterproductive to keep building settlements?
No, that's your interpretation. You asked if we will take into consideration the request of the President of the United States. I answered positively to that question. The motivation, the rationale is different. We agreed to take into serious consideration the positions of the President of the United States. But that doesn't mean that we agree with the rationale of that request.
But you haven't listened to the President of the United States, not this one or the previous one. Your government retroactively legalized almost 4,000 illegal settlements built on privately owned Palestinian land in February, a move the Israeli opposition leader said would damage the state of Israel. It also approved the construction of the first entirely new settlement in the occupied West Bank for more than 20 years. Yours is a government, Dani Dayan, that's bent on taking land from the Palestinians, not making peace with the Palestinians.
No, that's propaganda, what you said, not facts. Maybe you mean 4,000 units, housing units, not settlements. I understand that for you, every single house is a whole settlement. You are not the first one that made that kind of mistakes. Even American officials in the previous administration made that kinds of mistakes.
Thank you for fact-checking the number.
It's indicative.
What about the underlying issue?
No,
it's a nice evasion, Dani Dayan. What about the retroactive legalization of illegal units on Palestinian land? What about the building of an entirely new settlement? How is that listening to the US president, let alone obeying international law?
Look, again, the whole issue of settlements is so overblown, so overrated. The basic problem is not settlements or not settlements. The basic problem, all those are technicalities. The basic problem is whether the Palestinians recognize Israel's right to exist, whether the Palestinians recognize that Jews are also indigenous to this patch of land that we call Eretz Israel and they call Palestine. Okay. The moment the Palestinians will come to terms with this fact, with this reality, believe me, Mehdi, all other issues will be solved in a matter of weeks. Okay,
I believe the Palestinians recognized Israel's existence back in 1988.
No, that's exactly the problem. Okay. This is the basic problem. You touch now the gist of the problem, Mehdi. The problem is that the Palestinians recognize, maybe some of them, Israel's factual existence. They do not recognize its right to exist. Okay. They do not recognize that not only the Palestinians are indigenous of that patch of land, but also Jews.
Hold on, a Palestinian state does not exist and Israel does exist, so it's funny we talk about whose right to exist is at threat. But just on the issue of settlements, because you nicely evaded my original question, you called it propaganda. Do you deny that your government retroactively legalized almost 4,000 illegal settlement units and announced the construction of an entirely new settlement? How is that showing restraint? How is that restraint?
Well, that is exactly the definition of restraint. First of all,
doing something the leader of the opposition says will damage the state of Israel and the security of Israel.
Israel did not legalize, as you said, 4,000 settlements, not even 4,000 housing units. They passed legislation that may make that possible, and it's still under judicial consideration. So we are talking. You are talking about something that may or may not happen. Regarding the construction of a new community, yes, we evacuated the community of Amona, and the people of Amona are entitled to live in new homes. Now, you are confusing here between restrain and freeze. We did not agree to freezing the construction in Judea and Samaria. So you are really here, that is exactly the definition of restraint, but it's not the definition of freezing. If what you're looking
and
is
isn't the problem that there's never going to be a deal over land and settlements as long as the Israeli government is filled with religious fanatics who say God gave them the land?
Now, Mehdi, you are not going to drag me into a theological discussion. I am not there. I am a secular person. I am not going to be dragged, as you said, into a theological discussion. The reason we are in that part of the world is history, is that this is our homeland. Now, the moment the Palestinians will recognize that this is our homeland, as is their homeland, I'm not saying it's exclusively our homeland, that there are two people that are indigenous to the area we call Eretz Israel and they call Palestine, that day the peace process will start. Okay. That day the peace process will start, and you will be surprised how forthcoming Israelis will be.
You say I'll be surprised.
Unfortunately, the Palestinians are going exactly in the opposite direction of denying
I'll talk to the
Israeli
Palestinians when I see them on this show next. But I've got you in front of me, the Israeli government representative. You say that you don't want to be dragged into a theological discussion. You said, I'll be surprised at how much the Israelis are willing to compromise. I will be surprised because this is what Naftali Bennett, the Israeli education minister from your government, said on this show just a few months ago. Have a listen.
If you want to say that our land does not belong to us, I suggest you go change the Bible first, come back and then show me a new Bible that says that the land of Israel doesn't belong to Jews.
How is that not religious fanaticism to say we're not going to give up the land because the Bible gave it to us? It's 2017, Dani Dayan.
Mehdi, that's the religious argument. This is not
from an Israeli government minister speaking on behalf of your government.
Let me finish the answer, Mehdi. The Bible is one of many, many reasons that you can believe the Bible or not. But if you do believe the Bible is one of the reasons why the land of Israel, Jews are indigenous to the land of Israel. It's not the only one. I prefer, there are so many reasons. And it's so obvious, by the way, that the land of Israel, the Jewish people belongs to the land of Israel, that Minister Bennett used the biblical argument. I prefer to use other arguments. There are so many that you can pick and choose.
President Trump is the first US president to say openly that he's not bothered if there's a two-state solution or a one-state solution. Now, if memory serves me correctly, because you and I, Dani Dayan, spoke last in 2013, you support a one-state solution, don't you, in which Israel just annexes the West Bank and there's no independent Palestinian state ever.
No, actually I don't. That's correct that I told you more than once that I don't believe that the two-state solution is implementable, but I didn't mention at all a one-state solution. But it's also not relevant. You know, the moment I accepted Prime Minister Netanyahu's offer to join the Israeli diplomatic service and to serve as Israel's senior representative in New York, my private positions. I will the last person to underrate the importance of ambassadors, but ambassadors do not make policy. Ambassadors represent policy.
Just to be clear, do you support today a two-state solution?
I am very comfortable with representing the current government.
Okay, and the current government claims, somewhat cynically some may say, to support a two-state solution. Do you support a two-state solution, Dani Dayan?
I represent the position of my government, which Prime Minister Netanyahu formulated very clearly. If the Palestinians will recognize Israel as a Jewish state.
Okay, so the Palestinians recognize Israel. Will an Israeli named Dani Dayan recognize a state called Palestine?
No, you are trying to rephrase Israel's position.
No, I'm asking you your position, Dani Dayan. You're sitting in front of me. We've spoken before. Do you support a two-state solution?
The only important thing is the policy of my government. The policy of my government, the Prime Minister Netanyahu, is that if the Palestinians will recognize Israel as a Jewish state and Israel will have security responsibility over the whole area, in that case, Prime Minister Netanyahu will agree to two-state solution.
But do you understand why so many Palestinians don't believe that that policy is a real or genuine policy, given Prime Minister Netanyahu keeps appointing people like yourself and Naftali Bennett who clearly don't believe in a two-state solution? What's the point of having people like you represent the government when you clearly don't share the policy of that government, do you?
You know, I fully represent, I am fully identified with the policy of this government.
So you support a two-state solution?
Actually, I endorsed and I campaigned for Prime Minister Netanyahu during the last elections. So to try to put on my slim shoulders the responsibility for the lack of a solution to the conflict.
That's not what I said at all. I simply asked you whether you supported one, and I think the viewers see that you're not willing to answer that question. By the end of 2020, Dani Dayan,
I will tell you, Mehdi.
Okay,
unfortunately, I don't believe that right now it is possible to achieve the two-state solution. And the reason is that the Palestinians their demands are so intransigent that as long as they don't agree even to consider the recognition of Israel as a Jewish state,
they obviously would disagree with every word you're saying.
Okay.
But by the end of, I just have to,
that's exactly why we have a conflict.
Of course,
because we think A and they think B.
Of course, and one side is the occupier and the other side is occupied. By the end of 2020, there will be more Palestinians, Dani Dayan, in the entire territory now controlled by Israel than there will be Jews. At that point, would you still be okay with the status quo, given a minority of Jews would be ruling over a majority of Palestinians, many of whom won't have the right to vote for their rulers? How is that not apartheid, Dani Dayan?
Well, first of all, I think the facts that you presented as a fact are not true. I assume that you include in that count the Gaza Strip, which definitely is not under Israeli control, as you know very well.
The United Nations says it is still occupied, by the way.
Israel withdrew
the UN doesn't agree with your view
Even we took our dead persons from their graves in Gaza. There is no civilian, military.
But you control the airspace, the borders, the water. Yes, you do.
We do not. Actually, we do not control the border with Egypt.
Okay. But you control three of the other four borders. Okay,
because
Dani Dayan, back to the question.
Because they are a belligerent state, the moment they will stop to
Jews rule over Palestinians and don't give Palestinians the right to vote. Are you okay with that? Because people like Ehud Barak have said that would be apartheid.
I am not okay with that. I am not okay with that, Mehdi.
Okay. A controversial UN report said for the first time last month that apartheid already exists in the occupied West Bank. It was later withdrawn under US pressure. It's becoming harder and harder for people like yourself to shut down the debate over Israel and apartheid, isn't it?
They say that Israel itself, in its treatment of the Arab Israeli citizens, is an apartheid state. Well, that's so absurd that the Secretary General did the right thing in ordering the withdrawal of that infamous document.
My question was, it's becoming harder and harder for you to shut down. In the past, whenever the A word was mentioned, it was shut down as outrageous, offensive, anti-Semitic. Now it's becoming more and more common, not just amongst human rights groups, UN officials and others, but Israelis, leading Israel. Ehud Olmert, Dani Dayan, your former prime minister, came on this show last year and said to me, yes, he believes Israel will be an apartheid state if there is not a two-state solution ASAP.
Well, I don't know. I am not responsible for what Mr. Barak said. You know that in Israel, internal politics are very frequently, as Mr. Kissinger once said,
but Olmert, Barak, Rabin, Ben-Gurion, all of them have warned about apartheid.
I will tell you, what you said is widely known in very narrow circles. But look, I will tell you, Mehdi, if you look at take a map of the world and look at the bilateral relations of Israel these days in most countries in the world, I tell you with all responsibility, Israel was never less isolated in the world than these days.
But you're still losing lots of votes at the UN Security Council. You're still being attacked for your human rights abuses, for your illegal occupation, for your settlement building. You are. I mean, you may not agree with it, but you are.
We are attacked by Iran and Venezuela, yes.
Oh, no. I think Chancellor Merkel has attacked your settlement building. President Hollande has attacked your settlement building. The British Prime Minister has criticised your settlement building. The US State Department has criticised your settlement building.
even here, all of those persons criticizing Israel's human rights records. Yes, we have.
Really? Have you ever read the U.S. State Department annual report on human rights abuses? You should have a read. It's an interesting read.
We have differences of opinion on the issue of settlements. Yes, that is a fact.
Dani Dayan, we're out of time. Thank you very much for joining me on UpFront.
Thank you, Mehdi.